All right, we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. My name is Greg Ondo. We'll be hosting the Hangout today. All right, going to mute my other computer. If you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And if you're watching this offline, we're going to have people get logged in, get some questions asked as well. So we may be starting in about 10 minutes. If you're watching this offline, not live, you may want to just simply skip ahead a little bit. And once again, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us exactly where you're located. And it's always interesting. If you have questions, please feel free to leave that in the comments field. And we'll get started here. We'll start collecting questions. We had some people had sent some questions earlier. Okay, so we have Norway being represented. Los Angeles, I'll be there tomorrow. Okay, so, all right. All right, so Sal is online. Good to see you online. All right, we have Estonia, Sweden, someone else from Los Angeles. London is calling. All right, we have North Carolina, Philadelphia, Houston, Texas. It's great. My brother lives in Houston. We have Scotland. Looks like someone else from Virginia, Belgium, Hampshire, UK. I probably said that incorrectly. We have Italy. We have Toronto, Netherlands, Connecticut, Lithuania, Norway, London, UK, Netherlands. All right, Robbie is checking in from a very cold Dallas. It's pretty cold here today as well, so I can commiserate Robbie. All right, we have Istanbul in Turkey. We have London again, New Jersey, South Africa, Berlin, Edinburgh, Ireland, Netherlands, Toronto. All right, we have Tony Ray Jones from Nashville. Good to see you on the Hangout, Tony. Sorry, I missed you at the last time I was in Nashville, Switzerland. Always wanted to go there. All right, we have Akron, Ohio. All right, so we have a comment from Kid Nova that he loves these Hangouts, and I'm glad it's helpful. Finland, someone else from South Africa. We have people that love Cubase. That's good. We have Winnipeg. Okay. All right, we're just going to check, see if sound is coming back. Okay, so I think sound is back. Thanks for letting me know. One time I went for an hour without the sound on, and that wasn't good. All right, so we also have South Korea. Okay, I'll just turn this off. All right, so we have Kenya, Bulgaria. Okay, I'll try to slow my mouse movement down. Okay, so I see a question about fader spacing. Okay, so question on VariAudio. Okay, we'll just going through comments, copying over questions here. All right, so we have Vinny from Orlando. All right, so we have Annapolis, not too far from where I live in Alexandria. Okay, so I'm seeing a comment on the e-licenser in Turkish language. I will pass that on. Or we have Prague, Bangladesh. Okay, so it looks like people are getting a bunch of the sound is back. Okay, a couple of MIDI editor questions we'll get to. Okay, just get a couple more questions and then we'll get started. And if you have questions as we go on through the Hangouts, just enter them in the comments field. So I see a comment that someone is happy to see my basses in the background. Yeah, that was only 2 of 19 that I have. So I used to have a bass problem. Okay, just copying over a couple more questions and we'll get started. Thanks for everyone's patience and great questions. Okay, I'll just start from here. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we have. I just wanted to go over was how to set and delete markers within the loop editor. Hang on just 1 second, sorry. All right. So it was how to set up the different loop editors within Groove Agent SE. Just make sure we have that going. Within like the slices. So when I wanted to take a look at this, we'll just open up a project here that has some Groove Agent in it. So the question was like within the slice editor, how to manually add or delete particular slices. So if you're not familiar with this, one of the great things you can do in Cubase and within Groove Agent SE5 or Groove Agent 5 is the ability to kind of come over here. If we have, let's say, an empty instance of Groove Agent, what we're able to do is we could just put it to kind of our instrument pads, and then we could drag a particular drum loop to our to a pad, and this would just trigger the samples like so. And the question was how, and there's a couple of different algorithms for slicing. So if we go to your instruments and select edit and go to slice, at this point we could create slices, and this would basically automatically create slices at each of the transients. And the question last month I was just having a brain cramp on was how to manually add or remove a particular slice. So to remove a slice, you just hold down the Alt or Option key and go to the top here, and then you could remove the slice. And if we go to and if you wanted to add a slice, you could manually come here and just click with the Alt or Option key and then move the slice to exactly where you want it to be. So that's some easy ways to kind of manually add your slices. So you could do that from the automatic transient, or if you wanted to just set it up manually to add your own slices, again, the same concept here. To just manually add or delete your own slices, just hold down the Alt or Option key depending on your computer platform, and then you could just go directly like so. All right, we'll jump back to... Okay, so we had a question from a film composer wondering what libraries are. So when we start to work with particular projects, we could actually, at this point, save the media within the pool window if you wanted to. So if I go to look at my pool window, let's say if I'm scoring for a particular film and I have a number of different sound design elements or samples that I've worked with, what I could do at this point, if I wanted to be able to pull those sounds into another project but have these kind of organized, one of the things that we could do is just say new library. So what I want to do is we'll just come over here and let's say I'll just kind of go to my desktop, and at this point we could choose to come here. So let's just say I want to, at this point we could right click here and we could export this as a pool. So I'm just going to export this pool. We'll call it March 5th Hangout. And we'll just put this onto my desktop. So now if I go to a new project and I wanted to have access to all those sounds or sound design elements, I could just say, let's go here to, let's add a new library, and then we'll go to the desktop, and we could just choose to have that particular library open. So when we come here, let's say we'll let's just jump to another project. And at this point, we'll activate this. And even though it's going to be a different project, we can now just say we wanted to, I think, we could just kind of come right over here. If I did it correctly, we could now, if we go from the pool menu, you could now, if you wanted to, just choose to import a pool and have all those files show up directly just like that. And now all those particular files will be directly incorporated here. So that's a great way of, like, you know, having access to be able to work like that at and we'll right, we're just gonna. All right, check. We'll just. Okay, so I think we have audio back. Let me just check my monitoring computer. Okay, so I think we have audio back. Let me just check my monitoring computer. Okay, so we're talking about some of the different VariAudio functionality and chords. So thanks for everyone's patience. So we're talking about just mute this. All right, I appreciate the people calling with the letting me know that the audio was out. So we could have our functions here for, so if we select multiple notes, we could do this. We could also, if I go to the beginning of a note, we may have a segment here. I can now just kind of grab that particular note. We could also tilt, and we could tilt at particular points as well. So if I wanted to just tilt the beginning of this particular note, I could do that, or we can move the diamond over here, and now I could go to the upper corner and tilt that particular note. We could adjust the volume by going to the lower right-hand corner, as well as formant control. So as we do this, what we want is the ability to now create a vocal harmony. So since we know what the chords are, I could now just grab my range selection tool, and I'll just select a range of the audio here. And as we do this, I want to go to my audio menu, and we say generate harmony voices. So we'll do 4 harmony voices. And so now as we listen to our phrase, so that way you could just have all of, and if you want to kind of bring those down just a little bit volume-wise, these will automatically follow the chords directly here within, so the harmonies are musically correct based on the chords that we do. And now, if you wanted to select those, we can now go to your larger editor, and let's go to our VariAudio. At this point, we could see all of your different harmonies that have been created directly here. So you could edit different harmony voices, and they could automatically be colorized based on the chord track as well. So if you wanted to move particular notes, you could do that quite easily. So that's a quick look at how you can do some of the VariAudio as well. All right, going through some of the other questions. Sorry about the audio acting up. I appreciate the people calling to let me know. Okay, so a question, is there a way to strum within the MIDI editor? So let's go ahead and we'll just do a new project here. Okay, so if we have a MIDI track here, and let's say I have some long notes and I want to create some strums. Okay, so I think if you grab the line tool, let me just try and find a correct modifier here. So if you wanted to kind of create like different kind of plucking, if you grab the line tool and hold down the Alt key, you can just come there. So depending on your direction. So if you want to do simulate kind of different guitar voicings, you could do that. If you go from the other direction, you could also just kind of do that. So again, just holding down the Alt key, and let me see if Shift makes a difference. So if you go there, so again, the Alt key plus the line tool, and then you could just kind of create different almost strumming type of effects like that. So grab the line tool here and just the Alt key. All right, so we're going to check the audio again. I'm just going to check the audio one more time. Thanks. So don't know why it's going out so much today. Okay. All right, so I think the audio is back. Thank you, Sal, for letting me know. Okay, so let's take a look at next question. So the question is, Greg, what is the best way to organize my project files? So when you start off a project, the best way to do this is to come over here and we'll say new project. You have this option within the hub for use default location. And then you could set up a project folder. What I like to do is to set this right here, and it's kind of a subtle distinction on the hub for a prompt for project location. And I like to have every single project be its own unique folder. It's just easier to archive and back up data. So if I come here, we could say prompt for project location. It'll bring up a folder document. You could create a new folder, and again, think of every folder as each project is being in its own unique folder, and hit open. And now as you record audio directly into that particular project, it's going to go into an audio subfolder within the defined folder. So that's the easiest way for archiving and keeping track of all your projects. There are a couple preferences. So I think if we wanted to go to on import audio files, you could automatically copy the files to the working directory. So if we go to your preferences to editing audio, we could say, let's copy the files to the working directory. You could do that, or you could, if you have open options dialog, that'll prompt you if you want to automatically move the files into that folder. So if you import different loops, they could automatically be placed directly into your audio file folder. So that's kind of the best thing to do. So you could copy files to the working directory. You could choose that, or have the open options dialog so that it would be available at any time. So as we do this, again, when you go to new project, go to the hub, I like to have the prompt for project location enabled. So if we do that, I think that kind of keeps a lot of the file management very clean and organized. Okay, we have a question. My Cubase will not open up and showing an error message. What can I do to get my Cubase back up and working again? Thank you. One of the things you could do is, if I'm not sure what the error message is, sometimes plugins, when it's scanning plugins and it will do kind of a test, will actually allow, that could hang up the program sometimes. So sometimes if you hold down like Alt Control Shift or Option Command Shift right after you start the Cubase program, you'll get a thing where it could kind of run in diagnostic mode, where it could temporarily bypass the preferences that are found inside of Cubase. So if you want to try that, you could temporarily disable the program preferences and see, and often that will allow you to get in, and sometimes will allow you to be rebuilt, and you could try that. So that's the one thing I would do. If depending on the message, you may want to actually just, if it seems like it's a plugin that's causing it, or if it's something else, but I would definitely hold down Alt Control Shift or Command Option Shift, and right after double clicking on the Cubase, and hold that down until you see the little diagnostic mode for starting, and then that should All right, just going to do another test of audio and see if it's functioning again here. All right. Sorry about the audio's not liking us today. So I just kind of saved that as a kit. And now when I go to open up a kit here, I think we should... So, and that's really kind of, so when we come over here, let's say to my media bay, let's go to user content. So you can see these are some of the other Hangouts that I've saved. So I think what you want to do is just simply save the kit as, and we'll just try this again here real quick. Okay, so we'll go back to Groove Agent. And here's our Hangout kit directly there. So once you've kind of gone through and laid out all your samples, just right click here and choose to save kit as, and then you could type in the different metadata. Okay, going through questions. I'm sorry about all the audio dropouts today. Okay, so I'm going to scroll through some of our questions that were, some more questions that were submitted. So I see a quick question. Can Groove Agent be used same as Easy Drummer, drag and drop MIDI files? So yeah, if you have like a Groove Agent kit, it actually doesn't work through MIDI files, but if we come here, let's load a kit with patterns. And let's say if I click on my pattern pad here. So if I wanted that directly into the program, all I had to do is just drag directly like that from the pattern pad. So it's not necessarily a MIDI file, but you can just drag and drop from any of the pattern pads directly onto the project window. All right, so I'm going to scroll back in time here through the comments. All right, just reading through different. Okay, so I see a question, is there a way to switch between Cubase and YouTube in browser without getting sound error on YouTube? So sometimes what you could do, and it's this is kind of more on PC, but if you go to your studio setup, you may want to make sure that when you go to the VST audio system that you have release ASIO driver in back when application is in background. And there's also some settings that you can do. I can't really show it, but on the Windows audio interface settings, but make sure that this is checked. It took me a little while to get it kind of sorted out on my typical demo PC, but you can have it go back and forth. But you need to, within Cubase, to have this set up for your studio setup, and there's a similar thing probably in your Windows control panel, but make sure that you have the release ASIO driver when application is background is checked. And I could easily go back and forth with any of my audio interfaces on PC. Mac, I don't have any issues, but you may have to have that checked on PC for that to work, so you could hear videos on YouTube and your Cubase. Okay, so moving on to some questions. All right, just reading through some of the comments. Okay, so question is, call me old school, but is there a way to get Cubase 10 to look like Cubase 6? I bought 8, 9, and 10, but still use 6 since I'm so used to, but I want the new features. So for people that want kind of the appearance of previous versions, a lot of it can be done pretty easily with some of the preferences. So if you go here, go to the user interface, and if you go to kind of the custom, go to user interface and look at custom colors. Here you could just set the project background area. So if you come here, you could just say, I want this to be very white. So you say, okay. You could have it kind of look like that, and you could set up kind of some of the different settings to mimic the behavior and appearance of the older user interface. So you can see like the ruler background, editor backgrounds. So if you haven't, if you're still using old versions because it's how you liked it visually, you could probably go into here and customize the color schemes to make it work like previous versions. So again, you go to editing, or go to your preferences under user interface and go to custom colors, just like that. Okay, reading through some of the comments here. Thanks for all the great questions and patience for hanging out while the audio is going in and out. Hopefully it'll settle down, but I appreciate people calling me to let me know that the audio has stopped. Okay, so we see, how can I see the mixer and all inserts at the same time on one screen, please? Okay, so if we look at the mixer here, let's go to our full screen mixer. At this point, all you have to do is open up all of your inserts, and you could pick and choose exactly which components aren't there. But if we had a number of inserts available here, let's just say, and there are a couple like little preferences that you could do. So if we want to come here, we could say we wanted a fixed number of slots. So here you could see your channels plus all of your 16 inserts. And if you wanted to pick, like I didn't want to see the notepad or pictures, we could do that. And if you wanted to go to the rack view, at this point you could go to your different racks over here on the right hand side, and then you could just choose to see literally just like the inserts only. And if you wanted to not see like the EQs on top, so you can save this, and you could save this as a configuration. So we'll just say this is faders and mixer. And if I wanted to see a different configuration, I can now go to the racks and say I want to see my sends, channel strip, and EQ. So at this point, I could save this as a configuration. So I'll just come right here. We can add a configuration and say I want to see EQ, strip, and sends. And now I could just literally just kind of jump back and forth between the different mixer views that you want to see. And those could include the different channels. So once you have that set up, that could be a very powerful way to switch between different settings in different configurations of views within the MixConsole. Okay, just going through some questions here. Thanks for all the great questions and patience again with the audio cutting out so much today. Not sure why. Okay, so we have a question about VST System Link. Quick question regarding using VST System Link. If I wanted to use my second computer to run some of my more high CPU hogging VSTs, do I need to buy a whole new full Cubase license? It would require a secondary license of Cubase. It used to be like in the old days, like in 2000, there's a program called VStack, which allowed you to kind of host different programs. If you even have a Cubase LE, I believe, or Cubase AI version that comes bundled with hardware, that could work as a VST System Link host as well. And if you're not familiar with VST System Link, what it allows you to do, and if you go to kind of your studio setup, you could go to your VST System Link, and if you have two different audio interfaces with a digital audio connection between them, like a SPDIF or an AS EBU or an ADAT light pipe, you could send MIDI data and synchronization between the two computers sample accurately. So you could use one as kind of a DSP farm, just to run high power, intense RAM hogging VST instruments, and you could use the second computer just to actually run the MIDI information that's being sent to it. So, but you would need a program that would allow you to work as a VST System Link. Cubase Elements would do it. So it doesn't have to be the full version of Cubase. You could also do it directly with, I think, Cubase LE or Cubase AI. So if you have a Steinberg interface or some Yamaha hardware and you have an AI license, that's a great way to do it as well. But you do need to run kind of multiple instances of Cubase, but it is a great system. A lot of people use it for like a video slave, and the synchronization between the two programs is sample accurate. So if you could only run 300 tracks of audio in another, and you need another 100 tracks, you could have a secondary computer, make a digital audio connection, define that, and then those two would synchronize. So we got a question, how often do the Hangouts occur? We usually try to do 2 a month unless it's like a really busy travel month. So I think we'll be doing another Hangout in 2 weeks. January and February, we each had kind of one Hangout, but we tried to go for 2 months, two Hangouts per month. Okay, so Greg, is there a way to open Media Bay favorites in VST Manager on the right-hand side inspector with key commands? I don't think so, but if you go to Media to favorites, it's kind of 2 mouse clicks to get to your favorites, but I don't think that it could be defined through like a macro or a key command, but let's take a quick look and see if we could find that. So it might be, I don't have a numeric keypad on my current computer, but it looks like you may be able to open and close favorites with the command option plus the number 8 on a numeric keypad. I'm not sure if that carries over directly here, and I don't have my Mac keyboard doesn't have a numeric keypad, unfortunately, for me to try. But I would try that. It may open it only in the media bay, but if this is the active window, I would try that. And again, if you come here to under media, and you'll see, so we'll just again come here to the media menu and under, so you could open close favorites. So I would try that just out of curiosity, see if that did the trick. I don't have a way of testing it, but if anything would do it, that would do it. Okay, so we have a question regarding effects on events in tracks. I can't find. Okay, so in Cubase Elements, can't find a way to add effects to the tracks. One of the things that you could do inside of the, and this isn't a Cubase Elements thing, but I'll show you what you could do with the more like the Cubase Pro. So if we have a particular track here, and with Elements, you would probably just be able to, you may be able to kind of to go to the audio menu, and you might see plugins. I don't think it's in Elements, but you could just have different effects and process these effects like so. So I could just take this particular effect, and if I wanted that to automatically kind of change, and this would automatically apply the changes to that particular effect. And if I have even like a distortion effect here, so let's say if I wanted to run this through like a destroyer plugin, I could just drag and drop this directly into my list here, and this could automatically apply. So that's, you have the direct offline processing here. So if you wanted to have kind of different favorites, and at any time you could just right click, even like 10 years later, and remove particular effects independently without affecting the other processes. But I don't think that's going to be in Elements, but that's kind of how it works in the more advanced versions of Cubase. With Elements, what you could do is just simply, solo that particular track and choose to, it's kind of maybe not the best way, but you could, if you have all those processing on particular tracks, you could then just take your audio mix down. If that track is soloed, you could choose to, export the audio file and import it directly into the audio track itself. And that would automatically place the rendered file directly back into the timeline with, at the same time position. But the more advanced versions will have the direct offline processing, which is, very handy and very fast to be able to offline process effects to free up real-time system resources. Okay, next question. Okay, just reading through a couple comments. Okay, so someone is requiring just kind of like a basic tutorial for Cubase. There's a lot of different tutorials available on the Cubase YouTube channel. So, and there's some like starting from, like your first recording, your first MIDI recording, stuff like that. Okay, just going through some more questions. Okay, so we have a question. Can URRT2 feed 300 ohm headphones? Or should I buy a headphone amp for that? If I buy a headphone amp, can I plug the headphone amp into URT2? So I know some people with, I'm not sure which headphones are 300 ohms. I haven't heard of anyone really complaining about the headphone volume level. I know sometimes like the AKG K240s or can be low for some systems, and I use those. I have my Yamaha headphones, which I primarily use and don't have any issues, but I'm not sure off the top of my head what their ohm values are. But you could always just take the headphone output and feed that into another headphone amp. But you could just kind of give it a try and find out. I wouldn't buy a headphone amp without trying it first. Okay, so we have Tiber Kiss here, who is from Switzerland. Just thanked us for answering his question from the last Hangout. Okay, we have a question. Is there any way to know how much CPU is being used for each plugin individually? Thanks, Greg. There really isn't, and could be tough to know exactly, how much CPU cycles are being used per plugin, and some plugins will scale better than others. The one thing that you can do is just go to your audio performance, and as you're playing, you could kind of keep the audio performance window. If you keep that always on top, and let's say if we opened up let's say some multi-band compressors here. Let's see if we could. These usually can take up more. And let's open up some big reverbs here and see. So what you can do is, let's say we'll just hide these. As you do this, kind of bypass plugins, and you can kind of get a sense of the CPU load. So, but it won't show kind of an exact measurement per plugin of, but you could get a sense of which plugins are causing problems. So if we look at my average load here, and let's say if I duplicated this track and duplicated the track again, let's say I'll just duplicate these, both of these. So now if we do this, then you can get a sense of, okay, when I take off, these particular tracks, you could see how much of the CPU cycles, but not an exact measurement. Okay, so we have a question. Why can't I import FX channels and group channels and master channels from another project? Only audio, MIDI, and an instrument as options. Can we please try to have this feature? So when you go to import from tracks from project, it'll show, basically only the particular channels here that, are audio, instrument, MIDI. But what you can do is if you have more channels, let's say if we have group channels, and let's add some effects channels. And we'll just take a look at this. Let's just add. All right, so if we've added these, what you can do now is, if they are selected, and it's kind of a different process, and I will mention that, you know, people are wanting this particular thing, but if we have a number of groups and effects channels, you can choose to go to your file menu and export the selected tracks. So let's go ahead and just put this onto my desktop. So now if we go to a new project and I wanted to import and it's called an import track archive. And now when I do this, all my group and effects channels can be saved as group archive. So if you export the tracks, and I know this is kind of a different workflow, but if you wanted to get those, you could export those selected tracks. I'll mention again to our development team that, you know, people are wanting to have the groups and effects channels incorporated within the, you know, import options into the project, but you could just select the tracks, export the selected tracks, and then import them as a track archive. So that's something that you could try if you need to get those files back and forth easily. All right, so we have Youngstown and Cleveland. So we have a question, are the URRT2's main outputs are amped or no? I don't think they have any amplifiers in it. It runs as a line level output. Okay, so we have a question. Middle C in Cubase is C3. If I send to a loop mash, or let's say to a loop back where I have a MIDI aux and a virtual MIDI piano keyboard, each of them is reporting me C4. Is there a way to remap middle C in Cubase? Any other solution? So what you could do, you know, and sometimes we have C3 and C4, and what is middle C? And it can be problematic because, you know, within because middle C is often determined by pianos that have 88 keys, and then within the MIDI specification, you know, so there's 88 notes on the piano, but 128 notes within the MIDI specification. So, you know, using kind of so different companies have different representations of what is C3. So you could have the controller automatically, you know, map. I know some people that will take the controller and map the controller up or down an octave if necessary. If we have, let's say, just a quick MIDI track or an instrument track, you may want to experiment with the input transformer. So if we set this to local or to global, so let me just come here. And let's say I just want to set it to local. You may want to say I want to transform MIDI notes. And then, so what we want to do is define notes. We want to activate the module. So make sure you do that. I see a lot of people spend all this time setting up an input transformer only to not have it work because they just didn't turn the on button on. And then what you could do is we want to take MIDI notes and then maybe have that automatically take value 1, and we want to add, so value 1 within a MIDI note message is the pitch. And then here we can just say we want to add 12. So at this point, anytime that you play a MIDI note on this particular channel or locally, or you can set it globally, it will automatically add an octave to that. So see if that will work for kind of your loop back functionality. And again, you could do that just directly within the input transformer here. And then you could probably also use some of the MIDI effects as well. So if you wanted to, if it's not necessarily like an input type of scenario, if you go to your MIDI inserts, at this point you could choose to do your MIDI modifiers, and you could probably just set this to transpose up 12 on a particular channel here. So let's just type in 12. And so that could be another way of kind of changing it to be another note value. Okay, so we have a question. I have a Yamaha DD65 digital drums. When I record MIDI to Cubase from it, the bass drum becomes wrong note for Groove Agent kits. How can I assign the C0 bass beats to C1 notes within, which was what Groove Agent wants? So when we come here, let's just add a quick instance of Groove Agent. We could do the input transformer trick that we just talked about with that. So let's just... So if you want an incoming note to change this particular, like to trigger, if you want C0 to trigger this, what you could do is... just find the right... So, what you could do is if you come here, you could try to set it to like a Yamaha DTX. But I think let me just... Okay, so I'm sorry, if you just right click on a note, you could just do edit, learn trigger note, and then just hit the C0, the kick drum pad, and that should automatically assign it to C0 to C1. So, or that should automatically take the C0 that's being transmitted from your Yamaha to this particular pad. So again, just load up the agent in Groove Agent. Ideally, it's sometimes better to have the transmitting MIDI note be changed. So if you do that, that's a little easier. But if you right click, just go to edit, learn trigger note. And at this point, you could type it in, or you could just hit the MIDI note message. I'll just hit a controller here. So if I just right click again, so say edit, and I just hit C#1, that would automatically just assign that particular MIDI note. So just right click, edit, learn trigger note, hit the note that you want, and that will All right, and we'll go ahead and continue again. We'll see if the sound comes back. Okay, so I think our sound is back. Sorry about all the sound dropouts. Okay, just reading through comments. I know we've had some sound dropouts. I apologize for that. It's not much I could really do with kind of the interface. And sometimes the chat is behind what I'm reading, so I apologize. I appreciate people calling. All right. Okay, just reading through comments, and there's a lot of no sound comments, but we'll. All right, so I'm just reading through different comments here. Sorry. I know there's a lot of no sound comments, but we're trying to get it back on, so I think it's working, but I'm just reading through. Okay, just reading through comments again. Okay, just going through comments again here, and there's a lot of no sound concept. Okay, I'm scrolling back through different comments, and we're going to make sure that sound is still kind of working as expected. So we'll just. Okay, so I see a question: how to record, multiple instrument tracks to an audio track within Cubase. So, there's a number of different ways to do that. So let's go ahead. And we'll see if the audio is going through. Okay, so I think we have audio back. Sorry for all the audio dropouts. I'm not sure what's going on with YouTube today. It's not cooperating too well here. So, okay, so we'll now kind of come over here and we'll try to get through some more questions. Okay, so we have a question, unique audio file names. Is there any possibility to automatically add the date or project name as a prefix, suffix to the audio wave files? My wave names mess up since I work from a fixed template. So again, when you kind of go to, once it's been recorded, you could just kind of come over here. Let's say if we wanted to go to the pool menu, there may be some, within Nuendo, we have some more extensive audio capabilities for renaming, but let's go to our pool window and see if there's, sorry, now we have my neighbor's dog is just kind of, so if you wanted to, rename the files, let's say if we come here, there's going to be on the export, you could rename the files. Let's say if we just did the export audio mix down, here you could, write in with kind of the naming schemes. And here you could put in, different channel names and channel type and the project name. But, what some people will do is if you have a number of audio files, and I'm just going to continue to kind of check my, all right. So if you have a number of audio files, like starting from a template, at this point, we could say, let's go to, we have, let's say, a number of different audio tracks. And if we go to the project logical editor, so we can say media type is equal to audio. And we could also say media type is equal to MIDI. And we want to go to name, and then we want to append, and now we could say today's date. So we'll say March 5th, 2019. And at this point, we could just say apply. We're going to select all the files here. And then so let me just place these all into record really quickly. Okay, so we'll just say now we want to put March 5th, 2019. And now you could just prepend the names like that if you wanted to before you start. So, all right, we'll check, see if audio is still going on. Okay. Okay, so we have a question about the chord track and to see if we could create a macro to have the chord track automatically go to the particular track names. So let's see if we could do that. So we'll add a chord track. And let's add several instrument tracks here. don't know of a direct way of doing it without dragging it, but we'll take a look. See if we can copy. I don't know of a way other than to drag it down like so. I'll see if I can play around, but I think you may have to drag down for that to work. Okay, so we'll go on to the next question. Okay. Okay, so we had a question from Charles that when you go to the Cubase icon, that it's not showing the .cpr file is not showing the Cubase icon. So depending on which operating system you're on, you may just want to go to, let's say, if we go to your documents, and right click, and then you may want to just associate that with the particular program, like so. So, and it could be different on Mac and PC. Okay, so we have a question. My audio preview window won't play back the tracks any way I can get around it. So it's probably when you go to preview like an audio file, like different loops. So say if we come here and we'll go through some of our content. Okay, so this will be routed through the listen bus. So probably what you want to do is to make sure when you go to your audio connections that you have the outputs defined but chosen as not connected and your control room set up. So right now, if I set this to not connected and my outputs here to my UR44, it won't preview. We don't hear the files. When we go to our audio connections, and again, bypass this, we want it defined but not routed to. And then if I come to my UR44 here, at this point, I could have my preview. So I would try that, and that would probably fix the problem for you. So make sure within your VST connections, your audio connections, that you could just have your monitor set up. You want to right click and add a monitor and route that to your audio interface output. Okay, so we had a question. Don't know if this question was made yet. Is there a way to color multiple tracks at once? So let's go ahead and we'll create a new project. So really all you have to do is, let's say we have and right now we have this set as a preference. So when we come here, there's a couple different preferences. So if you wanted to go to event display to tracks, you can have the auto color tracks set here to the previous color. But if you wanted these all to be set to one particular color, simply select them. You could go to, like, if you hit Alt Control C, you could have the color panel, and now you could just change. So, or Alt Shift plus C or Option Shift plus C, you could now click and all of the colors will change correspondingly. Okay, so let's go ahead. I appreciate everyone's patience. I know the audio, for some reason, is cutting in and out today, so I appreciate everyone's patience. I appreciate the questions as well. Okay, so the question is how to use UAD plugins. So, really all you have to do is, load up your UAD plugins as inserts or as send effects. And they will just kind of, load up as expected here. So if you want to add like a reverb, I don't have any UAD plugins here, but if I wanted to add, any of my plugins would show up in my system. So if I just wanted to come directly here, I could add it as a send that could be shared across multiple tracks, or as an insert that would be dedicated to a particular track. So the UAD plugins would work kind of in the same paradigm. Yeah, so I'm seeing a comment about the internet lag. So, by the time I talk to you, there is like a 30-second or so delay that goes on. So, so I appreciate everyone's patience again with the audio dropping out and kind of monitoring it slow, like very quietly in the background. So I apologize if you hear the voice kind of in a little bit of a delay. Okay, just kind of go through more questions here. Okay, just going through different comments. So just catching up here. So I see a question. Is it possible to settle the grid to 1/12 in the sample editor? So let's go ahead and take a quick look. Okay, so when I come here, let's see if there's a way to have that automatically snap. So within the actual editor here, you could choose kind of like your triplets. So let's say we want to use our quantize, and let's say we wanted to do quarter note triplets. So here on the project window, we can have that automatically snap directly, even though you don't see it on a grid, you could have that automatically when we have it set to use quantize, where you could do kind of 12 or within triplet divisions. But the question is within the sample editor, so to make that, I think it's probably going to be handled more on the project window, but you could just have kind of your set the quantized value to a triplet value. And then you could have that kind of snap directly like so. Okay, so we had someone who's asking where is the sampler track. So if we go to the sampler track here, really all you have to do is, and depending on your version, is introduced in 9 or 9.5. So if you just add a track, you could just add your sampler track like so. And then you could see the sampler controls. You could also just drag and drop any audio directly into it. You could take any audio file and choose to right click and create a sampler track. And then you could just trigger the sample like that. So, but you could also just kind of, click on the plus sign here and add sampler tracks. So we had a question, is there a way to auto divisi instrument or MIDI tracks? For example, can Cubase distribute chords as single voices to different instruments or MIDI channels, sort of emulating a string or brass ensemble? So if you have kind of straight chords, let's say if we're here, let's just go to my instrument track. And let's say we draw in some chords. There is kind of a logical editor preset. So you could now just kind of, if we go here to the logical editor, you can say type is equal to note. And here you could choose to extract. And you could say value 1. And let's... And I think there's I'm trying to remember the way to do this. So we can say type. Maybe position. Let me just... Just trying to remember, there is a logical editor function that could extract like the highest note or the lowest note within a chord. It's not foolproof to be kind of an auto divisi though, but there is, and I could play around with it some more to see if I could get that kind of functioning. Yeah, maybe we can show it on the next Hangout. Okay, just reading through comments. Again, I appreciate everyone's patience with the sound is not cooperating today. Okay, so question about, is there any weird pitch or envelope manipulations possible within Groove Agent? So yeah, let's go ahead and jump back to that. Okay, so we'll just go back to this project and show you some of the pitch envelope stuff. Okay, so let's say if I have a particular file here, and I want to go to a particular instrument, so I could select just like the kick pad here. And then what you want to do is go to your pitch. So if you wanted to, do stuff like randomize the pitch, but you could also just set the envelope amount. You could kind of turn it up high. Add additional points. You also have kind of coarse tuning, So those are some of the, so if you go to the instrument, select the pad and go to pitch, you could set the envelope amount, and then you could just kind of double click and add new envelope points if you want. Like so. But make sure that you have the envelope amount value over to the right. And you could also do some other interesting things, like if you have just this one particular sound, something I like to do a lot. Whereas now if you go to pitch, you could just say random. So you can take that one sound and just kind of randomize the pitch. Kind of make it a little more interesting that way. So there's some cool little pitch envelope things that you could do within Groove Agent SE or Groove Agent as well. Okay, just going through. Okay, it says, hi Greg, how can I export all tracks as a separate audio file with the exact same length in a finished project? And this is exactly kind of what the functionality of the batch export. So I'll just go to one file here. So let's say if I'm in this project and I wanted to make stem files for everyone, all you have to do is just kind of come here. You can set the left and right locators, and this will define the range of how long each of the files would be. Go to your file menu to export audio mixdown. And then you'll see channels to export, and you want to select export multiple channels. So you can take all of your groups, your effects channels, your instrument channels, all of your audio, your VST instrument channels, And then when you export, at this point, you could just have it automatically export and create a new project if you wanted to. So let's say you could enter in your new project, and then as you export, it would automatically just simply make equal length audio files or stems very easily and very fast. So again, just go to your file menu, export audio mixdown, make sure that we have export multiple channels, and that will automatically select all the different families of groups, and that will make equal length audio files that could automatically be imported into any program. Okay, we're just reading through some of the different comments. And again, I appreciate everyone's patience with the erratic audio transmission today. Some days it works, some days it doesn't. Today is one of the days, so I appreciate. Okay, so we have a question. Can we rearrange faders in the MixConsole? Well, you can't do it necessarily in the MixConsole. If you have the MixConsole in the lower zone, you could just simply drag and drop and place the contents directly from the project window, and that's automatically reflected. But there isn't a way currently to drag from the mixer and kind of rearrange tracks there. But if you have this set up, it's kind of very fast and easy to do just like that. Okay, just going through some of the comments here. So question, is it possible to use pitch correct as live mode? So yeah, there is a pitch correct plugin. So if you come here, well, we have like the VariAudio for kind of an editing paradigm. What you could do is just simply come here, and under pitch shift, you could have the pitch correct plugin. And this, you could actually just, do it live if you wanted to. It may not be the most ideal situation, but what you could do is just simply, you could put this on an input channel if you needed to record that in real time. You could kind of set your, your scale here. So if you say, okay, I want this to be, a C major scale, or I need it to be, A minor, whatever key, you could define your scales here as well. You could put that on the track to monitor. You could put on an input channel to process in real time in case you didn't want to do VariAudio. So again, just under, go to your plugins and default pitch shift to pitch correct. Okay, so we have a question. Can you use parallel compression in Cubase using the MixConsole, or do you have to put a compressor on the insert of the track? Well, parallel compression is basically taking one track and having one kind of unaffected and the other track not be affected. So if I wanted to come here, there's a number of different ways of setting this up. So let's say if I wanted to add group tracks here, and I wanted to add 2 stereo groups, and I'll just add them directly below here. So what you could do with this particular vocal is, and one of the handy things you could do in the full MixConsole is you have this concept of direct output. So if you go to the racks, you could activate direct routing here. So I'm going to go to this particular vocal channel, and then what I want to do is to send it to group 3 and to group 4. Now, sometimes it may seem like once you activate one, the other one is turned off. And if you go up to here, you could just say one of the settings that you could do is to have direct routing summing mode on. So once that is checked, you can now send to both destinations. And what you want to do is to basically, let's just see if that's still. Okay, so we have the direct routing summing mode on, and what you can do is just kind of send it to this group. You want to leave this group kind of unprocessed, and you want to take this group and process this. So you can send it to two different parallel sources using this. Some people use sends to do it as well. So you can say send this to group 3 and send this to group 4, whereas one will be processed and the other won't be. So, and then within, let's say, group 4, what you want to do is to perhaps go to your channel strip and go to your compressor and, you know, set up kind of like a real heavy compression on one of the parallel paths and not on the other. So one of them, you know, kind of by parallel processing and parallel compression, one of them will have to be sent to kind of a non-heavily compressed channel and one to a heavily compressed channel, and you kind of find this sweet spot between those. Okay, so getting back to our pitch correct. So is it possible to have pitch correct as live mode, meaning record a live input with it without a delay? So I don't think the pitch correct, you know, some of the plugins on input channels will have a live mode. But let's just take a quick look at how much of a delay the pitch correct plugin will actually introduce. And this is one of the features found in the full in Cubase 10 was you actually have a channel latency function. So if I wanted to add, let's say, a pitch correct plugin, we could actually determine how much latency. So it's only 40 milliseconds, but I don't see a particular live. Some of the plugins will have, you know, different modes. So there will be some latency imposed by the plugin, but it's not like, you know, some of the plugins like the multiband compressor will have special modes for live input. That plugin doesn't. Most people won't want to apply pitch correction on the way in. I know some people do it and then, but you know, obviously once it's been applied, you can't undo it. So it may not be the best workflow mentality to do. Okay, so we have a question. Is it possible to save own sample libraries with picture in the media bay to the right bar like Steinberg Cubase has their own libraries? I'm not sure. Let's take a look in the media bay to see if we could associate your own image with particular libraries. So let's come over here to like our VST sound. So let's say hip hop vault. If we go here, and we'll go to the definition and see if there's a picture. I don't know of a way to have the icon or to create an icon that shows up in the right hand side of the media bay. I could play around with it some more so that when you go to like your loop libraries, you could have kind of cool pictures like this. You know, we've added the ability for plugins, but I don't know of a way to have that image show up for user libraries, but I could look into it. Okay, so we have a question. How do you do sampling in Cubase, time stretching, the sample, speed up, the sample, chopping up, slicing samples? So for like quick stuff, you know, if you have just your sampler control here, you could just drag and drop any audio file directly in. And then if you wanted to have it play back in kind of, you know, to synchronize, you could just come here. So this way it'll play back the same speed. So if I now wanted to go to like my chord pads, you could do stuff like that. If you're working with slices, this is where you could, the sampler control doesn't really deal with slices, but what you could do is click on these, you see these three arrows and you say transfer to Groove Agent SE. This will automatically take that sample, load it into Groove Agent SE, and here you could just kind of do your sample slices. And we talked earlier how you could adjust these and add, you know, different slices if you wanted to by holding down kind of your Alt, and then if you wanted to. And you could now take each of these and you could probably just come here, use pitch bend as well. So if you wanted to just kind of come here, let's see if we set our pitch bend range. I think it might be under here, probably not. But if you want to take any, so you could just kind of set your pitch bend data as well. So I think if we go maybe to the sample, so you could, you know, you work with your different slices and samples right there. So you see, is it possible to create a macro toolbar for some touchscreen reasons? I've kind of passed this in as a personal feature request to myself. So there really isn't a way to do that, but I know there's a lot of programs that are kind of using this. I think like people are doing it with Stream Deck is like a little portable thing that could trigger off macros and keyboard shortcuts. So yeah, and I know a lot of guys have probably seen like Junkie XLs or pictures of Hans Zimmer's studio. They all kind of have like their own kind of custom configured touchscreen systems that they've spent a lot of time tweaking. A lot of people use Lemur or Touch OSC as well. So we have a question: can Logical Editor freeze or disable tracks? So if we go to the project Logical Editor, so let's say if we wanted to, you know, say we'll go to our audio, and then I think it's going to be, let's see if it's maybe under track operation. Let me see if there's different. So I don't know a way to kind of do it through that, but you know, the track disable, I think if you just go to the key commands, So if you just go under your audio menu, you could just choose to, while it's not a logical editor preset, there is a keyboard shortcut for disabling or enabling the track. And if you're not familiar with that, what that could do is if you have like a lot of virtual instruments loaded up, you could just kind of right click and you could choose to, disable or enable tracks. So if I do that, that will then unload my CPU cycles, and you could right click to enable. So there's keyboard shortcuts for that. And let's see if there's keyboard shortcuts for freezing. So there isn't a shortcut for freezing, but there are shortcuts for render in place. So you could kind of do keyboard shortcuts. I'm not sure if there's a reason why you want it within the project logical editor as opposed to just firing off the keyboard shortcut. But let me know if there's a particular reason you're looking for it in within just the logical editor as opposed to firing off the keyboard shortcut. Okay, reading through different comments. Thanks again for everyone's patience with the audio issues we've had today. Okay, so it's just seeing question. I'm using C10 on both Mac and PC. I have very powerful computers. All drives are NVMe. But why is it taking so long just to display presets? A list of any plugins within Media Bay. 10 seconds almost. All right. So one of the things that you could do is if you go to preferences, at this point we could say, so go to preferences and under Media Bay, make sure that you have the maximum. If you just kind of come here, I think you could have this set for like 100,000 as opposed to 10,000. So depending upon how many how many files you have. So, and you could also just choose to say scan folders only when Media Bay is active. So you may want to try checking that. So even when I kind of jump over here to like my VST and let's say, okay, I just wanted to come here to like my VST instruments, and if I double click, you could see all your different libraries and presets that kind of pop up here. So make sure, that you don't have Media Bay kind of basically, every time that you open up Media Bay that it's going through some different settings. So if we come here, let's get to setup and see if there's any kind of preferences within here. But, there's, and sometimes it'll do that if it never completes the original scan. So, so try that as a preference, and I think that will probably kind of speed up your Media Bay workflows. Okay, so just reading through some of the comments. Okay, just reading through some of these. Okay. Okay, so seeing comments that some people are liking the lemur. Okay, so I'm just seeing questions. What happened to the clean up function? I think that was removed within version 9 or 9.5. I haven't gotten a good reason why, but you can still kind of get rid of unused files within the pool. Okay. So, question: is it possible to remove adapt to zoom as an option in a grid type menu so I don't have to scroll through it with my key commands? I don't think there's a way to remove it from the particular menu. You could choose to, not have that set up. Once that feature kind of came in place, basically, I think that if we look at the key commands, let's see if we could, sorry, let's go to the key commands and see. I think we could scroll through like the grid types. Yeah, so there's like a next and previous grid type. So I don't know of a way to bypass that. It's just one of the available grids. So, all right. So, question is, hi Greg, is it possible to operate your plugin parameters using your MIDI controller knobs inside of Cubase? So, yeah, if you wanted to come here, a lot of the instruments themselves, can be kind of right clicked on. So let's say if I come here and you could, if you wanted to edit different parameters. So let's say if I just wanted to come here, you could learn CC and move a knob on your controller to do that. If not, you could assign, like, some audio plugins aren't quite as savvy for like MIDI control. So if I have this parameter, what you could do is right click on it and add it to quick controls. And then you could see the quick controls here, and you could assign your quick controls to do hardware control. So if you go to your studio setup, you could say, we'll go to our track quick controls, and you could adjust these accordingly and learn to function and control directly with your hardware controller. So a lot of plugins will have a right click on the function or parameter, learn to MIDI CC, or you could assign it, right click and assign it to quick controls, just that easily. All right, reading through different comments, questions. Okay. Okay, so let's see if there's any other questions. I'm just going to do a quick refresh here to make sure I'm not missing any comments. I know we probably lost some people with the various audio dropouts. I really appreciate everyone's patience with that. Let's see if there's additional questions. If I had missed your question earlier, please feel free to re-ask it again. We'll have about maybe 15 minutes left. So, all right. So we see a question about VariAudio 3. Is there a way to make a preset for the VariAudio editor, like used algorithm, color scheme, smart control? So I think, when we go to it, I don't think there's a way, a way to have it kind of pre-configured. I know a lot of people will have it pre-configured within a template, and this question kind of goes to the VariAudio, it's like, okay, I want it to have this as my smart controls. I want this mode. I want the color to be based on chord tracks. I know some people, that have templates will kind of build their template with that. But let me just see if it's perhaps key commands where maybe we can make a macro. This might be under. Okay, so within the sample editor, let's see, there's doesn't look like there's a way to do that, but that would, I understand kind of the need for having kind of a default state set, and I'll go ahead and pass that on, but it's usually just kind of one or two parameters, so it's probably not the end of the world. But I could see where that could be, having to do that every single time could be a little annoying. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit earlier about how can I use workspaces as a scratch pad for ideas, track versions. So I think it's one of the first questions, or one of the early questions we did, and just in case the audio was kind of misbehaving at that time, like track versions may make sense for this. We'll just kind of do this one more time. So let's just add a quick instrument track. So say I was just kind of like, sketching an idea. I could come here and just with my MIDI controller. All right, so if I've recorded just like an idea and I'm just kind of experimenting with, different workflows or different ideas or concepts, I could just say, okay, I really liked this. At this point, I could, let's say we'll do some self-editing on it. And at this point, you say, okay, I like this. And you could just say, let's do a new version. And I know people that will just build up, different track versions of different ideas. And then, you can say, okay, I like this particular version, or I wanted to do yet another one. You could just say new version, come here. And you could just kind of keep overwriting and have different track versions where you could navigate quite easily. What some people I know, they're just kind of coming up with different sketches. As I mentioned before, and again, it's probably the audio had cut off, but if it's being routed to a virtual instrument, and it's a MIDI part at this point, so your audio parts you can just kind of capture as, different track versions, so people work that way. But MIDI parts, you could also export these as a MIDI loop, and then you could browse those MIDI loops and have those stretch to tempo. And when you import that, as opposed to opening a standard MIDI file, the MIDI file won't necessarily contain the actual audio, the instrument association with that particular preset. But a MIDI loop, you load it up, it loads up the instrument in the state that it was in with the content. So, but you could definitely kind of pop back and forth using track versions as a great sketchpad. And you could then, if you wanted to, build a new version that was kind of the best parts of versions 1, 2, and 3 into version 4, you could do that very easily as well. So those are kind of great things to be cognizant of and be aware of, and kind of for sketching different ideas. All right, let's see if we have any other questions. And again, I know we had a bunch of audio problems, so I know it's probably a bit annoying to lose the audio, but I sometimes don't have as much control over the transmission, so I apologize for that. But if you have other last-minute questions, if you want to go ahead and enter them in, and if we don't, we'll wrap up just a couple minutes early. So we'll see if there's any more audio or any more questions coming in as we wrap up. And if you like this format of video, make sure that you subscribe to the channel and you like the video. And we'll go ahead and we'll wait just a couple minutes and see. Okay, we'll see. Okay, so we have a question, how to assign saved quick control settings for more than one channel at once. So you could have kind of like your 8 quick controls. So let's say if we're here and we have an audio track, and if you go to your quick controls, there's different quick control presets as well. So you could actually just kind of come over here and, if you want to see volume and panning, you could do that. But if you click just right here, you could just go directly to like your EQ bands, or if you want to be your sends level. So you could kind of navigate between different quick control settings, multiple quick control settings directly within that. So that's one easy way. And then, each track could have its own independent quick controls, and you could have these kind of show up, as, and a lot of instruments, when you load up the presets, will automatically load that up as well. Okay, so we had just a quick question. It says, I use Cubase since 10 years, but I don't understand the difference of the two modulation automation ways. So, there's 2 different ways that we could write, MIDI controllers for a particular part. So if I come here and I have some MIDI notes, and let's say I have modulation data written here. So, we could have that modulation showing up as controller data, as kind of this kind of older school paradigm of MIDI sequencing. But some people may want to edit that kind of as, you know, directly as automation data. And, you know, there's some clever things you could do with automation data for copying between the two. So just beware and be cognizant, and you could change this if you go to the CC automation setup. So some people may want the MIDI to be written as automation so that the automation for volume of a VST instrument can be the identical functionality and paradigm of the MIDI control, you know, so the the automation paradigm between audio tracks and MIDI CCs can be the same. Some people may want to work completely distinctly different ways. Some of the automation has some flexibility for easier copying and pasting of data. So, you know, if you're happy with how you're working, you could leave it as is. But if you wanted kind of a single unified automation experience between audio and virtual instruments, that's when you may want to switch the CC automation setup to an automation track. Okay, so it says, had one more, Greg. How can I fix missing samples issues in Cubase? I can't get rid of the error. And when I locate sample, it says cannot create link. Any solutions? Check out, there's going to be a program that's installed. I think it's with Cubase 10, but it's called the Steinberg Library Manager. So if we come here, you can now just simply kind of go to your library manager. And then at this point, you know, you could actually just kind of search for, you know, your different, you could move these, but you could also just kind of associate your different files. So check out the Steinberg Library Manager, and that's installed with 10, and that should create the links again. And so again, we see, okay, and I see the question about, you know, I want to move all the content folder from C to the E hard drive. It's 20 gigabytes. I need the space on C. So again, you could just kind of come directly here to that Steinberg Library Manager program. So this will allow you to move the content. So again, it's going to be just, you know, when you come here, this would just, you know, you could select all of your content and just click on move and pick your location. And you could do that for all of them at one single time. All right. And, you know, I'm seeing comments about Groove Agent not finding the sounds. And that would be kind of the same thing. Okay, so just saying, is it possible to audition the sounds within Groove Agent or within the media bay in sync? So say if I have my tempo here and I'm playing, and now I wanted to go to Groove Agent. And we can say align beats to project. So now, so if you have the align beats to project, that should. And if you notice that there's a lot of, you know, degradation and time stretching, it could be that, you know, you're putting a loop that's 120 beats a minute into a project that's 60 beats a minute. So you may run into some situations where it's just going to be inevitable. All right, we'll see if there's any last minute quick questions. If not, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Again, I appreciate everyone's patience with the audio issues. Uh, it just happens some days. I hope everyone has learned a couple of things. Okay, so we had a quick question about what's the best way to write a tempo track after recording freely played MIDI events and preserving the tempo that was originally recorded. So let's come here, and there's a really great function. So I'll just come here and let's say that this project is not really following the tempo. So if I put this in. So what you can do is if you go to the project menu and say tempo detection and just say analyze, this will automatically create the tempo map from the instrument itself. So that's probably the best way is kind of, so if you have a freely recorded piano performance, just simply, select it, go to your project menu and choose, tempo detection. And then you could just use, if it's off, generally does a really good job, but you could go to your time warp tool and then you could just kind of move and say, this is where the downbeat is. And you could move, the beats or measures that's determined to the particular MIDI event. And you could do that within the MIDI editor as well. Settle in the last hour or so. So I appreciate everyone's patience with that. We'll probably be doing another hangout in a couple weeks. Hopefully, we won't have any additional audio problems with that. So we'll see you next time. Goodbye.